Biology. We're going to do chapter number 2 today. The name of the chapter is Flowers, Fruits and Seeds. Now, if you have ever observed a tree, you'll find that the most beautiful or attractive part there is the flower. Alright. Now, this flower, you'll see that different plants they have different kinds of flowers, and the flowers may differ in color, shape, sizes. Alright. Now, this flower, what is this? The flower, it is nothing but it is the reproductive part of the plant. It is the reproductive part of the plant. Okay. And what is its main function? The main function of the flower is to produce fruits and seeds. This is the main function of the flower. So in this chapter, we are going to learn about the basic structure of flower. Then we are going to learn that how does this flower, it converts or it makes fruits and seeds. Alright. So firstly, we have to know what is a flower or what are its basic parts. So let us start with parts of flower. Attached to the stem with the help of like this, a stalk-like structure. Okay, this is known as the pedicel. This is known as the pedicel. Next, the pedicel, it has a swollen top here. Okay, or it becomes a bit swollen. This part is known as the receptacle. Next, this receptacle, it has 4 whorls, okay, whorls or rings, 4 rings. Now, what are those 4 rings? We'll be seeing them one by one. At the the lowermost, the whorl is the sepals. Okay, you'll find leaf-like structures here, which are green in color. These are known as the sepals. This is known as the sepals. Then you have very beautiful, bright kind of, petals here. The colorful part that you see of a flower, these are known as the petals. Fine. Then inside the petal again, there are 2 more things. Those are, in the middle, you will find a structure like this. Okay. This is known as the carpel or the pistil. And at the side again, you have another structure. These kind of structures at the sides again. This is known as the stamen. So basically, these are the four main whorls. Okay, the stamen is there, carpel is there, petals are there, and the sepals are there. These are arranged in ring-like structure. That is why we are calling them whorl. Now, a plant, it can have many stamens, okay? Not only one, it can have 2, 3, many stamens. So when more than one stamen, they come together, they are known as androecium. Okay? Then again, this structure, which is a carpel or also known as pistil, when more than one pistil is present, together we call it the gynoecium. Next, the petals, you can see there are more than one petals. The petals, they come together and they form the corolla. Similarly, the sepals, they come together and they form the calyx. Now we are going to study each of these 4 whorls. Okay, we are going to study each of them and we will see what is its function or why is it important. So basically a flower has all the parts which I have just mentioned. Alright. So calyx. First we'll start with calyx. I will just show you a diagram here. It will make it easier to understand. See, this is basically the parts of a flower. Now this is the stalk about which I was talking. This is the pedicel, okay. See this swollen top here, this is known as the receptacle. Then you will see these green-like, leaf-like structures. These are known as the sepals, and together they form the calyx. Then there are these colorful things here. These are the petals, okay. Then you see this thing. These are the stamen, okay. See stamen, it has two parts. The up part, this is the anther, lower part is the filament. This is the male reproductive part, and the female reproductive part here is the carpel, okay. See, it has three parts: the stigma, the style, and the here it has the ovary, and here it has the ovules. Altogether it makes the pistil. I will show this in the board again. Now as I have just shown in the diagram, so this is the sepals which together make the calyx, okay. So more than one sepal makes up the calyx. And as you saw in the diagram, it is leaf-like, it almost looks like a leaf and is green in color. Now the function of the sepal is that a bird, when a flower is in the bud form, alright, when it is really small and in the form of a bud, then these sepals, it protects the flower, okay. The next part is, and these sepals, they can be separate, like they can be separate like this. Each of them can be like this, like a leaf, or they can be joined together like this, okay. So these are like more than one sepals, they can be joined together as well. The next part is the corolla. As I said, many of these, the colorful part that you see here, many petals together, they come and they form the corolla. Now what is the function of this corolla or the petals? You will see that these petals, they are generally very bright and colorful, okay. They usually have good scents also. Why? Because the work of this petal is to attract insects, okay. It has to attract insects. Why? For a process which is known as pollination. We will be studying about this process also, okay. So its main function is to attract the insects for pollination. And what else it does is that, see here, see the calyx, this is the last word, okay, or the fourth word. This is the fourth word of the flower. The petal, this is the third word. We are starting from downwards, alright. Next we have the stamens here. So you can see that this corolla, it is protecting the reproductive parts, that is this, the androecium and the pistil, okay. So we will see them also one by one. So two of the parts are done. The third part is the androecium. Now this long thing that you see here, this is the stamen, okay. See here, one stamen is there, two stamen. This is the male reproductive part, okay. Firstly, the androecium is made up of stamens. So more than one stamen is together called as androecium. This is the male reproductive part, okay. This is the male reproductive part of the flower, right. Now if you see carefully, see, look at this. See, this is the stamen, okay. Now if you see, you can see two parts here. There is one stalk-like structure which is thin and is like, you know, a little bit long. This is known as the stalk. This is known as the filament, okay. This is the filament. And above the filament, see here, you will see a structure which is a bit swollen, okay. This is known as the anther. So, in this entire thing, that means the anther and the filament together is known as the stamen, okay. So, from this you can say that a stamen, it has two parts, the anther and the filament. Now, the anther here, what does the anther do? The anther, it produces some yellow powder-like stuff, okay, that is known as pollen. So the anther, it produces some like this yellow kind of small little things, you can say, which is almost like powder. This is known as the pollen or pollen grains, okay. And these pollen grains, see, if this is one pollen grain, it has two cells, alright. One pollen grain, you can say that it has two cells or two male cells, alright, which are known as these are known as the male sex cells, or also known as the male gametes. Okay. Remember, each pollen grain, it has 2 male gametes. Fine. This was all about the androecium. Then we'll go to the next part, which is the gynoecium. The first word. Okay. The gynoecium. Now, as you can see here, at the middle here we have the gynoecium. This structure here, in this flower, it has only one pistil or only one carpel. Okay, the gynoecium, it is made up of carpels. So if there are more than one carpel present, it forms the gynoecium. Now this here only one is there. In many flowers, it can be more than one. So this carpel, it is made up of 3 parts. See here at the top, you will see again this part is a bit big, or it is a bit swollen. Okay, this part is known as the stigma. Okay, this part is known as the stigma. And what is its function? It has very sticky kind of fluid here. Okay, remember I said that the pollen grains are made. The pollen grains, they will come here and they will stick. Okay, so this is the stigma, and it has a very sticky kind of liquid there. Next part is the style. This is, see, a tube-like structure which connects the stigma to one more part, which is, you can see, is very swollen down here. This part is known as the ovary. Okay, inside the ovary there are small cells like this. These are known as the ovules. Okay, so basically this pistil, it is made up of 3 parts: the stigma, the style, and the ovary. These 3 parts together make up the carpel or the pistil. Okay, and inside the ovary again we see that there are small egg-like thing there. It is known as the ovules. Now these ovules, they contain the female sex cell. Okay, it contains the female sex cells, also known as the female gamete. Also known as the female gamete. Alright. So this was the basic structure of a flower, and we saw all its parts. Now let us go to the next topic, which is pollination. So the next topic is pollination. Now if you remember, I said that the anther, it makes pollen grains. The anther, it makes pollen grains, and then what happens? These pollen grains, it goes and sits on the stigma, because there is a liquid there which is very sticky. Okay, now see, suppose there is a flower here. Okay, you have a flower here, you have the stigma, you roughly drawing this, you have the anthers here. Fine, suppose this is one flower. I'm not drawing the other parts. Okay, this is one flower in one plant. This is one plant, this is one flower. In the same plant, there is again another flower. Okay, similar like this. Then there is this stigma, then there is these anthers again. Fine. Now what happens in pollination? The anther, it was making pollen grains. So the transfer of the pollen grains from the anther, that is the male reproductive part, to the stigma, okay, to the stigma here, is known as pollination. That means this is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. Okay, this process is known as pollination. Now pollination, it can occur in 2 ways. This can be of 2 types. Okay, what are they? They are, the first one is self-pollination. Self-pollination, and the second one is cross-pollination. The second one, cross-pollination. Now see here, as I was saying, so we know that pollination is the transfer of the pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. Okay. Now, if this is one plant, this is one flower, this is another flower. these are on the same plant. Okay, imagine this is a marigold plant. Okay, so this is plant, the first plant. Then we have another marigold plant. Suppose again here also we have the stigma. Okay, you have the stamens here. Fine. You have the flower here. This is not looking like a marigold, just assume it to be one. Okay. Then, suppose the pollen grains are produced in this anther and then it gets transferred to this stigma. Okay, to this stigma. Notice here that the anther and the anther and the stigma are of the same plant, are of the same flower. See, it is the same flower. The anther is produced within this flower and it is transferred to the pollen is produced within the same flower and is transferred to the stigma of the same flower. Okay, this is known as self-pollination. Why? Because it is taking place only within one flower. Now, imagine there is another flower but of the same plant. Okay, so the pollen grains from here, it goes and gets transferred to the stigma of another flower but of the same plant. Okay, so it does not need any other plant. It can reproduce, or it can do pollination with its own help, or within, it can happen in this one single plant only. Okay, so this type of pollination is known as self-pollination. It can be within the same flower or two different flowers of the same plant. Now, suppose this is one plant, marigold plant, this is the other one. If the anther from this flower, okay, marigold flower of one plant, gets transferred to the stigma of another marigold flower of another plant, okay, then this is known as cross-pollination. That means you need more than one plant here. It cannot happen here, okay. Again, similarly here, the pollen grains here, they will get transferred to the stigma of another plant. So this is known as cross-pollination. So this was all about pollination. Now, see there is some distance between the stigma and the anther. Okay. In this case, there is a lot of distance. So how are the pollen grains going to go to the stigma? The pollens, they do not have legs, alright, so they cannot walk and just go. So they need some agents or some help to transfer the pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. So pollination is just done with the help of three agents. Okay, what are they? They are insect, wind, and water. These are the three agents through which the pollen grains, they move from one flower to another. Okay, I'll just show you an image here. It will make it more clear. See here, this is pollination by insects. Okay, insects like butterfly and bees, they can help in pollination. Now these flowers, you can see they are very beautiful. Okay, they are attractive, they have good scents, and they also have a sugary fluid inside the flower which is known as nectar. Okay, they have this fluid which is known as nectar. Now the bees or the butterflies, they come in the flower. Okay, and then they suck this nectar. Fine. So what happens when they come on the flower? Many of the pollen grains, they stick to the body of the insect. Okay, then again, when this insect moves from one flower to another flower again to collect nectar, then the pollen grains which are stuck on the body of the bees or any other insect, it gets attached to the stigma. So you can see that from one flower, the pollen grain, it got transferred to the other flower. Okay, so this is with the help of insect. Another thing you will notice here is that in case of insect pollination, see the petals, they are really large and they are beautiful. Okay, so as to attract the insects, and moreover, as I said, they also have this nectar which attracts the insects. All right, this kind of pollination, it happens in plants like jasmine, sunflower, marigold. The second one is pollination by wind. See here, this one. What happens here? See these yellow things that you can see, these are the pollen grains. Okay, now when the pollen grains are going to be transferred by wind, they have to be very light, because if they are heavy, they won't get carried away by the wind. So these are the anthers, they are producing the pollen grains. Alright, when the wind blows, it will carry away the pollen grains. So you can see that the anther in this case, they are long and they hang out of the plant so that the wind can easily blow the pollen grains. Okay, then see here, this is the stigma. You can see the stigma, see it has like these kind of you can say hands or filaments. Okay, it is feathery so that it can catch the pollen grains. Another thing you will notice is that see here, the flowers which show this kind of pollination or pollination by wind, they do not have bright colors or they are not, you know, beautiful. They do not even have nectar. Why? Because they do not need to attract the insect. That is why. See, this is very like pale in color, okay, just yellow with no beautiful colors and all. This kind of pollination, that is wind pollination, it occurs in maize, grass or sugarcane. Alright. Then the third one here is pollination by water. Now see here, the male and the female plants are there. Then what happens here? In a similar way that you saw the pollens here got carried away by wind, in the similar manner, pollens here will get carried from the male flower to the female flower with the help of the water currents. Okay, and this kind of pollination, it occurs in plants like Vallisneria and Hydrilla. Now the next topic is fertilization. Okay, so till the last topic we spoke about how through the various methods and pollination we spoke. So by that, the pollen grains, they come and they sit on the stigma, right? So this is the pollen grain which sits on the stigma. But after this, what happens? So there is a process called fertilization which occurs after pollination. Okay. Now let's see how this occurs. Now see, once the pollen grains, it comes and sits on the stigma here. The pollen grain, it starts making a tube. Okay. It develops a tube-like structure, which is known as the pollen tube. See, this is the female part, this is the carpel. Okay, the stigma, this is the style, the ovary, and then inside it has egg-like structure, which is the ovule. Now, after the pollen grain, it sits here, it makes a tube-like structure. Okay, and it enters the ovule. Fine. See, first a tube-like structure is made like this, a tube. Then what happens? Remember, inside the pollen grains, I said there were two male gametes. Yeah? Two male gametes were there. So these two male gametes, through this tube, they enter the ovule. Okay, so there are two male gametes. One is here, say another one is here. Okay. Next, what will happen? They will come and one of them will enter the ovule, inside which is the female. There was the female gamete. Okay. There was the female gamete inside the ovule. So this male gamete, one of them will come and fuse with the female gamete. Okay, so this fusion, the fusion of the male and the female gamete to make a new cell, which is known as the zygote, is called fertilization. Okay, so fertilization is the process by which the male gamete, it fuses with the female gamete and makes a new cell, which is known as zygote. So this process is called fertilization. Fine. Now what will happen to the zygote? This zygote will develop into an embryo. Fine. This is going to develop into an embryo. An embryo, it is the, you can say it is the baby plant. Fine. This is the baby plant which will grow to become a big plant. Okay. So after fertilization, we see that zygote is produced and this zygote will turn into the embryo. Then you will see this ovule. Okay, this ovule, this will turn into seed after fertilization, and this ovary will turn into the fruit. Okay, so this is how the flower, it turns into fruits and seeds. So all these changes occur after fertilization. Next, we are going to, as we just said about these fruits, we are just going to see about the parts of a fruit, and then we are going to see see, after when I said fruit is made, fruits again, they can be of many types. Okay, basically you can say they are of two types. They can be very dry type. Okay, those are known as dry fruits, and they can be very fleshy types. Those are known as fleshy fruits. So these are the basic two types. Okay, and then I will tell you more about this. After all this, after the fertilization, what happens? Remember, there were stamens out here, then there were these petals were there, then the sepals were there. So after fertilization, all these parts, it dries up and then it falls off. Okay, all these parts, it dries up and falls off. Okay. So as we said, the ovary transforms into the fruit. Let's just see the parts of the fruits. So now we know what is the fruit. The fruit is the nothing but the ripened ovary. Okay. Next, types of fruits. Sorry, parts of fruits. Now, a fruit, this basically has two main parts. It is the pericarp and the seed. Now remember, the ovary here, this was the ovary down there. The wall of the ovary, outer wall of the ovary, after fertilization, this forms the pericarp. Okay, this forms the pericarp, and inside was the ovule, right, which transformed into the seed. Now this pericarp, it has three parts. Okay, this pericarp, it has three parts. Exocarp, also known as the epicarp. Then it has the mesocarp, and finally it has the endocarp. Now the word epi, it means outside. Okay, so generally when you eat a fruit, you will see that there is an outer skin there. So the epicarp, it forms the outer skin. It forms the outer skin of the fruit. Okay. Next you will see the mesocarp. This is the fleshy edible part. Okay, the part that you eat. And endocarp, this is the layer which covers it. This is the hard layer which covers the seed. Okay, covers the seed. For example, I will give you an example here. Mango. Fine. Now when you eat a mango, you will see that there is a cover outside, right? You will see you peel off the cover. So that is known as what? That is the epicarp. Okay, that is the epicarp. Inside the yellow thing that you eat is the mesocarp. Okay, and then you find that there is a seed inside. But after eating this yellow part or the mesocarp, you will see that there is a very hairy structure there, which is covering the seed. Okay. So this part is the endocarp. It actually protects the seed. Alright. So these are the basic parts of a fruit. And next we are going to see the types of fruits. Next is types of fruits. Types of fruits, these are of two types. As I said, they can be dry fruits, or they can be fleshy fruits. Okay. Now, from the word dry fruits, you can understand that these are dry in nature. Okay. As I said, the epicarp, it was divided into three parts, right? As we saw in the case of mango. But there are many fruits in which the epicarp, it cannot be distinguished into the pericarp cannot be distinguished into the endocarp, mesocarp, and the epicarp. Okay. So those kind of fruits are known as dry fruits. Example is peanut. Okay, now when you eat peanut, you see you have this kind of structure, right? This is actually a fruit, alright. Then what you do, you break the shell, right? This brown color shell, you break it. So this brown color shell is nothing but the pericarp. Okay. Now in this part, you cannot distinguish, right? Do you have any edible part here? No. The entire thing is very dry. So the pericarp, it cannot be distinguished into the three parts, hence it is called the dry fruit. Okay, and inside you find the seeds which we eat. Next is this is also found in the case of walnuts. Okay, in the case of walnuts, in case of almonds. Right? Next we have the fleshy fruits. In here, like the mango, you can distinguish. Okay, you can distinguish between the three parts. Okay, you can distinguish the three parts of the pericarp. Example here we have mango. In mango you can distinguish, right? You have an upper skin, you have the middle part which you eat. Okay, orange. These are all examples of fleshy fruits. Okay. Next we are going to study about the structure of the seed. We had also studied about the seed, so we have to see about its structure. For this I will show you a chickpea. Now see, we can see these are seeds. Okay, these are chickpeas. Alright, the one that we call cholas. Now see, this is a dry one, and this one I have soaked it overnight, so as a result it has swelled up. Alright, now if you see here, can you see this small brown like structure here? This one, this is known as the hilum. Okay, this is known as the hilum, and its function is to see, this is a tiny opening, and what it does is that it absorbs water. Alright, then you see this at the top, there is this seed coat. Okay, I will just take this out so you can see. Can you see this thing? This is the seed coat. Alright, the main function of this seed coat is to protect the seed which is inside. See, this is the seed coat which is coming out. Next you will see, now after the seed coats, see here in the middle I can just do two halves here. These two halves that you see, this one and this one, these are the cotyledons. Okay, these are the cotyledons. Then see here, can you see a small structure here? See, this is a small structure. This is the embryo. Okay, that means, remember we said the zygote, it develops into the embryo, and this part is going to develop into the new plant. Okay, so these cotyledons, before this can develop into a plant, these cotyledons, see, it is attached to the cotyledon, it provides it with food. Alright, and then see, like this pea here, you can see it has two cotyledons. These are known as dicotyledons. Okay, di means two. See, it has two cotyledons. Okay, example here is chickpea. The other example you can see is in the case of beans. You will find two cotyledons, but then there are many plants which has only one cotyledon. They are known as monocotyledons. Okay, they are known as monocotyledons. Example is wheat, rice, then corn or maize. You will find that only one cotyledon is present there. Okay, next you see this embryo is there. This embryo is the little plant. Alright, and then it is going to use the food, and then from this part it is going to develop into a root and shoot, and then it will be like, it will become a plant, and then it will start doing photosynthesis. Okay, next is germination of seeds. Okay, so germination of seeds, this means that beginning. Okay, it is the beginning of the growth of the seed. So when the seed, it starts to grow, then that process is known as germination. Now how does germination occur? Suppose there is a bean seed here. Okay, this is very dry. So how is it going to germinate? It needs water. First it will take water, then it will swell up. Okay, this one, it will swell up, that means it will become bigger by absorbing water. Then it will rupture or break the seed coat. Okay, it will break the seed coat, and inside which the embryo is there, it will start to grow. Okay, then later it will start photosynthesizing or getting the accurate conditions. Now germination of seed, this is basically of two types. This is epigeal actually, epigeal germination, and then there is hypogeal germination. Okay, then there is hypogeal germination. Epigeal germination, example is beans. Hypogeal, example is maize or corn. I will show you pictures here so you will understand better. Now see, this is epigeal type of germination. Epi means above. Okay, so this is a bean seed. You will see that the seed is sown here, then water is given. Okay, the seed will soak water, and it will rupture the seed coat, and it will start to grow. See, this is the root part. Okay, the radicle will grow into the root, and this is the shoot. This is going to develop into a shoot. This is the hypocotyle. So what will happen? See, the seeds that we have sown in the soil, it will come out of the soil. Okay, see, as the hypocotyle, this is the part, the hypocotyle, as this grows, it will bring out the cotyledons. Okay, so this kind of germination where the cotyledons they are coming above the ground is known as epigeal germination. The cotyledons are going to be there, and see the leaves also develop. These cotyledons they are known as the first leaves. Okay, the cotyledons are going to be there. Then when the plant it starts developing leaves, and once it can make food on its own, this cotyledon it will just fall off. Okay, they will no more need this kind of cotyledon. So an example here is bean. The next one is hypocotyle germination. The word hypo means below. See, this is a maize or a cone. Now again, when you sow this seed and you give water, it will absorb the water, and see the plumule is growing upside, and this is the radicle. Okay, the radicle will form the roots, and the plumule it will go upstairs. Okay, now see the cotyledon here or the maize, it remains downstairs only, means it remains below the soil only, and only the shoot grows and it will develop into leaves. After some time, when the plant can make its own food, this cotyledon it is thrown away, or it is all utilized, and this cotyledon is no more there. And see the plant it will bring leaves, and then it can finally photosynthesize and make its own food. Other examples are mango. Okay. The next topic is conditions for germination of seeds. Now, if you just keep a seed outside, you will not see that that seed grows into a plant, right? So there are some conditions which are required for that seed to grow into a plant. So what are those conditions? Those are water, air or oxygen, and temperature. Now the seed which we have, that is very dry, okay? And the baby plant which is inside it, like it is alive, the seed is alive, but then it is like dormant, or it's like you can say that the seed is sleeping, okay? Because it just does not have the required conditions. So once we start giving water, what will happen? The food which is stored in the cotyledons, what will happen? It will get dissolved in the water, and the embryo or that little plant, it can use up that food, okay? Which it could not have used up if the seed was entirely dry, fine? So it utilizes that food, okay, which is now in soluble form, okay? And then it will help it to grow. Next is air or oxygen. Now what happens as the seed is growing, we know what is happening. Cell division is happening, right? How is the seed growing? Obviously cell division is happening and many more cells are coming into existence. So for this cell division, energy is required. And how do we get energy? Through the process of respiration, okay? So air or oxygen is needed for respiration, which in turn gives energy, which is required for cell division. And the third one is temperature. Now plants, they cannot, they need a minimum kind of temperature. It's like if it is too hot, then the enzymes which are there in the plant, it cannot work properly, okay? And same happens if the temperature is too low. So they need an optimum temperature, which is about 25 to 30 degrees Celsius. This temperature is like, you can say almost best for maximum of the plants. So this was all for this chapter. I will now give you the objective type questions. This is in page number 36. The first one is B, 2C, 3B, 4A, 5A, 6A, 7B, 8B. Calyx, stamen, ovule, cross-pollination, pollen tube, embryo, fleshy, germination. True, false, false, true, true, false, false, true, true, false. Number D, stigma, style, ovary, pollination, fertilization, endocarp, cotyledons. Then we have the question and answers here. Subjective type questions. Question number 1 to 12. The answers are given here. The four whorls in a flower are calyx, corolla, androecium, and gynoecium. The main reproductive part of a flower consists of stalks and swollen tops called stamens. The stigma is sticky so that the pollens can stick to it. Two wind-pollinated plants are grass and bamboo. When the pollen grains from the anther of a flower are transferred to the stigma of the same flower or another flower of the same plant, it is called self-pollination. Embryo is a part of a seed which develops into a new plant. The parts of a fruit are pericarp. It has 3 layers which are epicarp, mesocarp, and endocarp, and then seed. The outer covering of a seed which protects it from physical temperature related and water damage is called the seed coat. When a seed gets proper water, air, and warmth, it breaks dormancy and starts growing. The beginning of the growth of seed is called germination of seeds. the germination in which the hypocotyl elongates rapidly and arches upward, pulling the cotyledons above the soil, is called epigeal germination. Example bean. Moisture is essential for seed germination because it activates the enzymes and allows the utilization of food by the embryo. Suitable temperature is necessary for seed germination. Low temperature retards embryonic activity and high temperature destroys the delicate embryo tissue. That's all for today.